All right, could you please introduce yourself?
Larry Tansini.
What was it like going to school during the Vietnam War?
Well, I was in school at the beginning of the Vietnam War. We really didn't feel much of the effect of the Vietnam War at that particular time. The Vietnam War really started heating up in 1966. The controversy to the Vietnam War in 1967. Um, what we saw were some of the riots, Kent State, when some of the students were shot. Um, as far as myself, um, I was very committed to our country. I wanted to serve our country. Signed up for the Air Force, in fact, when I was 17 years old before I graduated. Um, had a spot to go in, um, and then once I graduated, I went into the Air Force.
Did you agree with the U.S. policy of the draft?
At the time, I certainly did. Our country needed to reinforce its forces over in Vietnam. So yes, I agreed with it 100%.
When you first enlisted, did you think that the United States was going to win the Vietnam War?
I certainly did.
How was your experience in boot camp?
In boot camp, well, that's kind of funny. The first couple days in boot camp, it seemed like, oh my goodness, we made the biggest mistake of our lives. In fact, when we were taking our oath down at the MEP Center in Philadelphia, um, it's kind of like you were taking an oath and giving your life away. Um, we were sworn to defend our country, and if that meant giving up our lives to defend the Constitution, then that's what we had to do.
Did you think the experiences in boot camp helped prepare you for life as a soldier?
Absolutely. Boot camp was very regimented. Um, Everything that had to be done the way it was supposed to be done. We didn't understand that in the beginning, but as time went on, we understood it. If you were out there um, on patrol or on recon and you did not do what you were supposed to do or understood the orders 100%, it could cost the lives of some of the guys in your squadron.
Could you please explain your involvement in the Blue Berets?
Well, in the Blue Berets, my involvement was to teach um, hand-to-hand combat. These were troops that were going over to Vietnam to protect the perimeters of the bases and to do recon around the bases.
And how did it feel to be able to train the Blue Berets?
Well, it was an honor. I mean, it was a great honor to be selected to do that. Um, we were very dedicated to what we were doing. We realized that if we didn't train, um, the guys that we had, that if they were put in this situation over in Nam, it could cost them their lives or the lives of some of the members of their squadron.
Why do you think you were picked to train the Blue Berets?
Well, it all started in Denver, Colorado. The base commander in Denver, Colorado was very much into boxing. And I had been in boxing and the martial arts prior to. And the base commander was in the gym the day that I was working out on the heavy bag and speed bag and asked me to join the boxing team. So I joined the boxing team and that kind of followed me out through tech school, and when I got my duty assignment at Fairchild Air Force Base, I was asked if I would want to support the effort of the Blue Berets and their involvement over in Nam.
What was it like in the U.S. boxing team?
Well, it wasn't the U. It was the Air Force boxing team. It was like any other boxing team. It was very competitive. Took a lot of training. Um, Went to various bases, and of course you were boxing in your own weight class. But it was something that was enjoyable. At times, you had to deep dig down deep into your spirit. Um, those difficult times when you felt you were going to lose.
Was this a professional team, or were you doing this for the entertainment of the troops?
No, this was amateur. It wasn't professional. This was amateur, and it was just amongst the various bases.
How was the general morale of troops who were drafted later in the war?
Well, I was in the Air Force, and in the Air Force, everybody enlisted in the Air Force. Talking to some of the guys in the Army that were drafted, there was pro and con. And with the forces over in Vietnam, um, there was a lot of rebellion in Vietnam, a lot of use of drugs. It was a very stressful time. Um, it's a shame because some of our soldiers that were over in Vietnam just weren't committed to the war. They would go out and be on patrol during the day, and then they would come back and party and all kinds of things at night.
So the drug usage was atrocious in Vietnam.
Very bad. And when some of our troops would go TDY to Okinawa and Guam, and the ones that were assigned in Vietnam, coming back, the amount of drugs that were brought back was just, it was very startling. Um, my particular squadron got so bad to where dogs had to walk through the squadron a couple times a week just trying to sniff out drugs. There were shakedowns constantly because of the drugs coming into our country. Guys coming back from Vietnam, Okinawa, and Guam would be bringing back stereo equipment, and their stereo equipment would just be loaded with drugs.
Would you attribute that to the loss of Vietnam?
Well, at the time when I was in, it wasn't a time when we finally withdrew from Vietnam. That was in the early 70s under Richard Nixon. Um, at the time I was in, it was still a very controversial war. Um, the war was kind of in a stalemate at that particular time. Um, so it didn't seem at that time whether we were, winning or losing.
When were you relieved from service?
1971 September.
Did Nixon's announcement of the removal of our soldiers from Vietnam come as a surprise to you?
No, because as time went on, it was a situation where we had to get out of Vietnam. And in getting out of Vietnam, we wouldn't be leaving Vietnam with honor.
So you agreed with Richard Nixon's decision to pull
Yes,
troops?
we had to get out because Vietnam became a very political war under President Johnson, and the generals and forces over in Vietnam weren't able to do what they should have been doing to win the war. And that was a lot of controversy amongst the troops over in Vietnam also, was that they weren't able to fight the war that they needed to fight to win the war.
What was it like being a soldier under such controversy?
Well, for myself, the controversy didn't influence me. I was very committed to what we were doing and did my job to the best of my ability.
Were any of the Blue Berets that you were training?
No, we were all committed. We were very committed. It was a very intense selection, and the guys that were there were very committed. There was no doubt.
So were all the Blue Berets you were training heading over to Vietnam?
A majority of them. And the Blue Berets was a special force. It was part of the security police. And in fact, in Fairchild Air Force Base, the Blue Berets, that was kind of their one of their headquarters for about 2 years. At that particular time, the Air Force did not really know where it wanted to go with special forces, and there were a lot of squadrons that were dealing with special ops, some on rescue missions, some protecting the perimeter of the Vietnam bases.
Were you or Vietnam vets in general treated any differently after coming home from the war?
I didn't experience any controversy, but some of my buddies did. We weren't granted any special privileges. Looking for a job, you had to be out there, doing your best to try to find a job. you weren't granted any special privileges or obligations or any I guess special privileges just because we were in the Air Force and doing what we were doing at the time.
Did you receive any hostility from those in America that greatly opposed the war?
Not in the Philadelphia area. When I was in Amarillo, Texas, we were told to be careful downtown because of some of the controversy. Denver, Colorado was another city where there was a lot of controversy. Fairchild Air Force Base was right outside of Spokane, Washington. Yeah, there was some controversy there, especially going into Idaho. You wouldn't want to go into Idaho in uniform
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
Do you think that America could have won the Vietnam War?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.